Thanks a lot for that introduction, Shamin. So, in defense of some deforestation to avoid perverse outcomes from zero deforestation, hope, kind of strikes me in the heart. So, I wanted to start out asking, what do you guys see when you look at this image? Because we had a similar scenario in our red discussion group, and I'm curious to hear what people see when they think when they see this image. Anyone can jump in. Destruction.
Fish bond.
A fish pond.
Future
Connection.
industrialization.
That's right. So, full disclaimer, I'm a forester, like Charmaine mentioned, but I'm a reborn conservation practitioner. So I've been pulled onto the side of working to save tropical forests. But I have to confess, when I look at this, I see development, I see progress, I see connections of remote frontiers to markets, I see job creation. But at the same time, as I'm a reborn conservationist, I see lots of opportunities for indiscriminate destruction of forests. So I completely understand why there are calls for zero deforestation as a development pathway to mitigate climate change, reduce biodiversity loss, and kind of stem the degradation of ecosystem services across the tropics that's ongoing. But at the same time, and zero deforestation originated from a demand from developed countries to clean the chain of custody for internationally traded commodities. But since the last UNFCCC Conference of Parties in Paris, a lot of governments, NGOs, and civil society organizations have adopted this call for zero deforestation. But I'm worried that there are going to be potentially perverse outcomes from this. And WWF, which is a World Wildlife Fund and one of the largest environmental international NGOs in the world, is committed to zero net deforestation by 2020, and have gotten 10 countries to sign on to this commitment. And they're also my funders. So, but I want to argue that, there are justifications for some level of deforestation. And when I was kind of, skimming the literature, I was so impressed to find a 1987 quote from Marion Schmink saying that, yes, there are pragmatic reasons for some level of deforestation. So I hope the discussion today will lead to a recognition of the conundrum of calling for all protection of forests, but at the same time trying to move these millions of people in poverty in the South to better human welfare. So you guys can stop me anytime and disagree with anything I'm saying, because I'm struggling with it as well, and I'm worried that how I think about it is an outlier, and if the majority of people don't feel this way, that the discussion is moving towards being irrational, of demanding zero deforestation. So, and I think that's one of my strong motivations for talking about this. So, and I wanted to reflect first about my personal story of how I came here. So my grandparents are agrarian. They are from the agrarian economy in Guyana. As typical of agrarian families, my parents are each from families of 1 to 12. And out of those 24 siblings, they were the only ones to make that transition to the urban economy. So they benefited from initial technical level of training. They became public servants in the government. They were in the 80s where family planning was huge. That resulted in me and my sister. They're the only tertiary educated family members out of 32 cousins on my maternal side of the family. So there's obviously an issue of in terms of development pathway where there's a rush to the first of the line and then a trickle down. But when I look back, I see my family that have been affected by the division of the existing land into multiple parcels. So there's a loss of labor, so the reduction of labor, increasing costs of agricultural inputs, and they still practice this primary section. So as we were saying, so the majority of my family are still based in an agrarian economy. They can be classified as rural poor because their parcels of land are smaller and they're still practicing shifting agriculture. Some of them have made it transition to the urban economy, but they're basically urban poor now. So are we preemptively removing ourselves? And when I say ourselves, I mean conservation practitioners from the development table by demanding zero deforestation. And I think this is really risky for us, especially in the sense that these tropical countries are continually being integrated in the global economy, which is not a bad thing because we are benefiting. There are benefits as well, but at the same time, there are continuing growth for commodities, for food, for fiber, for energy. So is zero deforestation something feasible, and is it equitable in the terms of with the ongoing demand for food, fiber, bioenergy? How can we promote zero deforestation that will not accommodate any expansion in agricultural production or infrastructural development in these countries in transition? For me, it seems both infeasible and inequitable. So I want to stop there, and I'm curious to hear what you think about this in terms of is zero deforestation feasible, and would it just inflate the inequity between the north and south?
Just to comment about specific, because I think it depends where you are, maybe. But in the Amazon, there's a fair amount of research that shows you can continue to increase production without deforesting. So there's not necessarily, they talk about decoupling. Okay, so then in that case, there wouldn't be theoretically that kind of.
So yeah, you're getting to something I'm going to talk about soon. So the other thing about the zero deforestation story, in the recent Conference of Parties, countries have proposed intended national emission reductions. So this is a clear cutting of an old growth forest in Canada, and based on their standards of reporting, that would be zero deforestation. So how can, and this is perceived as a double standard and this is where my rationality sometimes kind of slips into my mind, and I'm like, well, how are you asking us to not cut a forest? But when I look north, this is allowed. And how it's allowed is because the area that's cleared, and if there's an equivalent area that's replanted with plantation, it makes it net zero deforestation. So what I want to do, and this is where the rationality kind of comes in, do we want to be labeled as radical environmentalists that are kind of stemming development and reducing poverty? And for me, this is worrying because we've seen the rise of populist movements in developed and developing countries in the Trump phenomenon and Rodrigo Duarte, who are obviously challenging different aspects of development in their countries, but who say at one point in time there isn't going to be a leader that comes up from populists, because a lot of these countries have young populations, they're demanding jobs, they're demanding economic opportunities. And do we really want these countries to put a vote on how much forest should be retained to the ballot, people to make this decision? I know in Ghana, if we were to do that, it would be dire, because there is a big partition between the coastlanders that see the forest as a resource to be tapped. So this is where my kind of concern is. By demanding zero deforestation, you're making the irrational kind of discussion valid. So, but then again, so what are our forest carbon development trade-offs or pathways that, that is not necessarily zero deforestation and exists currently? So these are the two kind of common standards. The first one is what we call low carbon encroachments, the countries that cut all their forests, convert to agricultural subsistence, but aren't able to progress along the Human Development Index or welfare, whatever that indices might be, per capita income. So you're stuck in a cycle of subsistence farming, poverty, that with continuing loss of forests. An example of that would be Haiti as a country. Then,
wouldn't it, actually that arrow would be towards lower development, lower per capita income in a country like Haiti. Aren't they worse off?
I'm not qualified to say if they're worse off, but I think that's definitely compounded by their environmental disasters. So whether they're worse off because of deforestation in that cycle, or just compounding of natural disasters. And then there is the other more kind of prominent development pathway that we're more familiar in the developed world, where there is in the 19th and 20th century, there was mass forest destruction. And then as forests and natural resources became scarce, their recognition of our value increased. As a result, those deforestation rates kind of tapered off with some transition. But there's two reasons for that, actually. So one is the recognition that these forests were valuable in providing ecosystem services, but also there was the issue that forests were initially cleared for land uses and then subsequently abandoned because they were inappropriate for those purposes. So like the marginal ones. So what the world is proposing now is, this is how I envision zero deforestation, eventually, where it's a high carbon impoverishment. So the country I'm from, Ghana, we have 80% forests, but we're the second biggest country in the hemisphere. What the RED program is proposing is that there could be some moderate level of deforestation that is based on historical levels, but there can be some kind of leeway to move development forward in these countries. So, but the question becomes some versus zero. And this is what we're proposing. We're proposing to cut off or basically tunnel through that spike in deforestation. And so, So exactly what forest is going to be. And I think that's where we should be talking and our energies behind and remain on the table of development. Because if you look at these international banks, the World Bank, they're funding big infrastructure development. And for the most part of it, we're not sitting on that table talking about where these developments are going to occur and how can we protect these forests that are going to be impacted. So kind of switch this graph around in terms of forest cover. So this is the standard development paradigm where you go through a drop in your forest cover, it stabilizes, and then it goes up. And this is what RED is proposing to kind of save. So this is the some deforestation that will occur that is just necessary to move millions of people out of poverty. And I think this is where we need to ask questions about what exactly that sum means. And I think we can classify those into two kind of broad categories of socioeconomic questions of for whom, for what activities, for whose benefits, who are the actors, governments, private sectors, individual communities, why, for what purposes, who decides, and what are acceptable cost benefits, those. And then there are the ecological questions of which forests, where are they located, what fragment size of the maintenance of ecosystem services, and does the adjacent infrastructure and land use matter? And unfortunately, I think I kind of ran through that because I was hoping, but maybe now is the time for us to. I put forward how I'm kind of worried about how the discussion is becoming irrational, because I do find myself being like, this is a double standard. You know, the atheist kind of argument, like 30 years why we come to any agreement of like, well, the North did it, so why can't we do it? And I find that we're slipping back into that populist kind of irrational discussion. I'm worried about it. That was kind of premise I wanted to put forward for this.